The mop slipped from his hands. It clattered to the floor with a wet slap, echoing louder than it should have in the polished marble lobby of Helix Corp Tower. Arthur Rivera, 62, flinched. He bent down slowly, knees creaking like old doors, and reached for the handle with hands that scrubbed floors longer than most of the employees here had been alive. Behind him, laughter. Not casual, not harmless, targeted. "Hey, Art, you miss a spot," said Colton Hayes, mid-30s, jawline like a casting call, wearing a $2,000 suit and the ego to match. "Or are we scrubbing floors by vibe now?" The other executives chuckled, standing near the elevators like a pack of predators in custom Italian shoes. Arthur didn't respond, just picked up the mop, straightened his spine, and got back to work. That was his job. Had been for 27 years. And that humiliation in passing, like cologne, was part of it now, too. Colton wasn't done. He took a slow step forward, sipping his espresso like it was a spotlight. "Tell me something, Arthur. Ever mop up spilled ambition? I feel like you might have dropped yours back in '89. Laughter again, crueler now. It echoed off the glass and steel, off the Art Deco walls, off the janitor's silent shoulders. Arthur didn't look at him, just said quietly, "Some messes aren't worth cleaning." Colton's smile dropped for a moment, then returned, sharper. "Guess that's why you're still pushing a mop, and I'm pushing 7 figures. He stepped into the elevator, the doors closing behind him like applause. The others followed, leaving Arthur alone. Almost, because someone had seen it, not from the lobby, but from the side entrance. A man in a faded gray hoodie, carrying a backpack, sunglasses over calm, unreadable eyes. He didn't say a word, but his gaze followed the elevator numbers as they rose. To the 42nd floor, to where the rot began. On the 42nd floor of Helix Corp Tower, the air was thinner, not because of altitude, but because of ego. It clung to the glass-walled offices and imported espresso machines. It hummed through Bluetooth headsets and gleamed off the manicured fingernails of assistants typing emails they didn't believe in. Colton Hayes leaned back in his ergonomic leather chair, feet on the desk, scrolling through his own press coverage. Another feature in Forbes Under 40. Another headline about disruptive brilliance. He smiled, not at the article, but at himself. "Did you see what I said to the janitor this morning?" he asked, not looking up. "I did," said Lydia, his assistant, her voice flat. "Real charming." Colton chuckled. "Hey, it's a jungle out there. I just don't pretend the lions don't bite." But downstairs, the lobby was shifting. The man in the hoodie, Keanu Reeves, entered to the front doors, nodding politely to the receptionist, who didn't recognize him behind the worn baseball cap and sunglasses. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Just here to visit a friend," he said, his voice soft. "Company visit?" She paused, uncertain. Something about him was familiar, but he didn't offer more, and she didn't ask. His kindness disarmed her uncertainty. He stepped into the elevator alone, didn't press a button, just waited. The doors began to close. But just before they did, a voice called out, winded and wheezing, "Hold, please." Arthur, still carrying the mop bucket, still working. Keanu reached out and stopped the doors with one hand. Arthur entered slowly, nodding. "Thanks." Keanu said nothing, just stood beside him. They didn't speak on the way up, not until the elevator chimed and opened on floor 42. Arthur didn't move. "You don't want this floor," he said gently. Keanu turned to him. "Why not?" Arthur looked down at the bucket, then back up. "They don't make space for people like you and me up here." Keanu's face didn't change. "I'm not here for space," he said. "I'm here for a look." He stepped out. Arthur stayed behind, watching the doors close slowly on a man who, somehow, didn't walk like he was just visiting. The 42nd floor had its own climate. Cool, filtered air. Music, so faint it felt like it was whispering in another language. The kind of space designed not for comfort, but for control. Keanu walked slowly down the hallway, taking in every frame certificate, every buzzword-heavy mission statement etched into glass. Innovate, dominate, scale. He passed conference rooms where men in suits gestured wildly at charts. past assistants typing furiously. No one made eye contact. No one asked who he was. To them, he was invisible, until he wasn't. Hey, this floor is restricted. A voice rang out behind him. Sharp, male, and entirely too loud for someone holding croissant. It was Trey Madison, Vice President of Global Strategy, which mostly meant he found ways to sound smart while other people did the actual work. He approached quickly, eyes narrowing behind designer glasses. You lost, buddy? Keanu stopped, turned. Calm. No, he said simply. Trey looked him over. Hoodie, worn jeans, soft-spoken, not a threat, just another underpaid consultant or mid-level drone who wandered into the wrong elevator. You can't just roam up here, Trey snapped. What division are you with? Keanu considered for a moment. Observation. Trey blinked. That's not a department. Keanu smiled slightly. Maybe it should be. Trey scowled, stepping closer. Listen, pal, this isn't a tourist attraction. You got 5 seconds to tell me who you're here to see, or I'll have security walk you out. From the hallway behind them, laughter erupted. Colton had entered. Of course. Relax, Trey, he grinned, sipping from another branded espresso cup. If the guy wants to sightsee, let him. It'll make a great story for the cafeteria later. Keanu turned his gaze toward Colton. Calm, direct. The silence between them stretched longer than it should have. Something flickered in Colton's eyes. A twitch. Recognition? But it passed. You work here? Keanu asked. Colton raised an eyebrow. I run this floor. Keanu nodded slowly. I saw you earlier, he said. Colton laughed. Oh, yeah? You won the suits watching my pitch. No, Keanu said. I was in the lobby. Colton's grin froze. I saw how you spoke to the janitor. A beat. Then Trey scoffed. What? Are you his union rep? Keanu's voice didn't rise, but it did sharpen. No, I'm just a man who thinks you should watch what kind of footprints you leave. Some of them don't wash off. For a second, just a second, the room fell heavier. Colton waved a hand dismissively. Okay, Yoda. Cool speech. We done here. Keanu stepped past him. No anger, no heat, but the quiet in his wake said more than a raised voice ever could. And as he walked into the boardroom uninvited, no one stopped him. Because some men don't need permission to enter a room. Their presence is a permission. The Helix Corp boardroom looked more like a luxury showroom than a place where decisions got made. 12 high-back chairs. A 10-foot slab of Italian marble for a table. LED-lit panels displaying performance metrics. A digital aquarium pulsing quietly in the corner for relaxation. Power didn't whisper in here. It posed. And now, Keanu Reeves sat quietly in one of the chairs. Not at the head. Not even near it. Just there. No one had asked him to leave. No one had asked why he was there. Because the moment he entered, the tone shifted. Just slightly. Enough to trigger that ancient instinct in everyone's spine. Something important is happening, and I don't know why yet. Colton entered last, of course. Always fashionably late, even to his own performance. He scanned the room, did a double take when he saw Keanu still sitting there, then covered his surprise with a smirk. Looks like someone's auditioning for a raise, he quipped. A few polite chuckles. The kind people give when a powerful joke, even if no one's laughing inside. Keanu didn't respond. He didn't need to. Instead, he simply leaned forward and looked around the table. What's the mission of this company? He asked. It wasn't confrontational. It was curious, like a teacher, not an accuser. The silence was immediate and awkward. Finally, someone from accounting cleared his throat. To drive global innovation through scalable, investor-focused solutions that... Keanu raised a hand. Gently. I didn't ask for the tagline. I asked for the mission. Why does this place exist? Another pause. The air got tighter. Lydia, Colton's assistant, stood at the wall behind them, tablet in hand. But her eyes weren't on the screen anymore. They were on Keanu, on the man asking the question no one in power had ever had to answer. Finally, Colton shrugged. To make money, he said flatly. It's not a soup kitchen. Keanu nodded, slowly. And if someone in this building were disrespected, humiliated in front of their peers, would that affect your bottom line? Colton leaned back, unfazed. Not if they know their place. Dead silence. Lydia's eyes widened just slightly. A few others shifted in their seats. Keanu looked around the table again. I wonder, he said, what kind of company this could be if the people at the top remembered what it was like to be at the bottom. He stood, not angrily, but with purpose. You'll see me again, he said, then turned and walked out, leaving behind a silence louder than any quarterly report. Colton's fingers drummed anxiously against the conference table. The room had cleared minutes ago, but he stayed behind, restless, annoyed, but oddly uneasy. He tapped his smartwatch. Lydia, a few seconds later, she reappeared in the doorway, still holding her tablet. That guy, Colton said. The one in the hoodie. Who is he? Lydia hesitated. I'm not sure. Well, find out. If he's from compliance or some secret investor group. I want to know yesterday. Lydia nodded and left, but her expression lingered, like she knew something she wasn't ready to say out loud. Downstairs, Arthur stood beside the service elevator, bucket at his side, mop clean, shoes damp. He looked tired, not just physically, but the kind of tired that sits in your bones. Then the receptionist walked over, her voice hushed. Hey, that guy you were in the elevator with, I think he's someone. Arthur frowned. He was someone. He treated me like I mattered. That's someone in my book. No, I mean, she glanced down at her screen. I think he's Keanu Reeves. Arthur blinked. The actor? Yeah, and I think he's here on purpose. Arthur looked down the hall, where the man had disappeared hours ago. If it was Keanu Reeves, he hadn't said a word about it. No photos, no entourage, just silence, stillness, and questions, the kind that made powerful people sweat. Back upstairs, Lydia stared at her screen, her face slowly changing from curious to stunned. She picked up her phone and called Colton. Yes, he barked. It's him. Who? The guy in the hoodie. She swallowed. It's Keanu Reeves. Actually, Keanu Reeves. Colton sat upright, his face blanching. Wait, what? Lydia continued. He's part of an ownership group that recently invested in Helix through a silent trust. I just traced it. He's not just visiting. He's watching. Colton stood up so fast his chair toppled over. You're telling me I insulted a global icon? Yes, and it's all on lobby camera footage. Colton's hands clenched at his sides. He's not just an actor, Lydia added. He's a ghost investor, one of the silent equity holders. Nobody was supposed to know, including us. And just like that, the balance shifted. Colton's confidence wasn't just cracked. It was crumbling. He wasn't at the top of the tower anymore. Not really. By noon the next day, Helix Tower buzzed with something different. Not deals. Not deadlines. Whispers. Whispers about a man in a hoodie. A janitor in the lobby. A confrontation in the boardroom. And the name behind it all, Keanu Reeves. Not the movie star in a tux on red carpets. The quiet one. The subway riding, book carrying. Nobody telling you it's him until he'd already changed everything. Keanu Reeves. Everyone had a theory. No way it was him. I heard he owns like 10% of the company. My cousin says he gave his matrix salary to the stunt team. He doesn't care about money. What's he doing here? Arthur Rivera didn't know any of that. He just knew what it felt like when people looked at you like furniture. And now, people were looking differently. Not many, not all, but a few. Enough. He finished his shift, same as always, took the back elevator down, reached the janitor's locker room, and turned the dial on his old, dented locker. It stuck, as usual, but this time, when it opened, something was different. An envelope, no name, just placed gently on top of his folded sweatshirt. He opened it. Inside, a typed note. Arthur, some things deserve to be recognized, even if they were never meant to be seen. Thank you for showing the kind of strength that doesn't come with a title. Kar. And below the note, tucked between crisp sheets of cardstock, a gold access badge, valid for every floor. No restrictions. He stared at it for a long moment. He hadn't asked for this. He hadn't wanted this. But maybe, finally, someone saw that his worth wasn't measured in how quietly he scrubbed around someone else's shoes. Across the tower, Colton stood in front of the mirror in the executive bathroom, adjusting his tie like it might tighten back his control. He turned to Trey. "Do you think I should call him?" "Who, Keanu?" "Yeah." Trey laughed nervously. "And say what? Sorry I treated your building like my high school locker room." Colton didn't respond. He was thinking about cameras, and headlines, and consequences. Because apologies made from fear don't fix the mess. They just paint over it. The scanner beeped. Not red. Green. For the first time in 27 years, Arthur Rivera stepped onto the 42nd floor of Helix Tower without pushing a mop. He wasn't cleaning. He wasn't delivering supplies. He wasn't called in to fix a spill. He was just walking, and with every step, shoulders straight and steady, heads turned. Some stared in confusion, some in guilt, and a few looked away entirely. Because when a man you ignore for decades suddenly has access to places you once believed were above him, you start to wonder who really holds a key. Arthur passed glass offices and designer chairs. The walls hadn't changed, but the air had. It was tighter, quieter, and as he turned the corner near the executive suite, Colton stepped out of his office, nearly bumping into him. Their eyes met, and for the first time, Arthur didn't look away. Colton froze. No audience, no espresso, no smirk, just the two of them, face to face, equal footing. Arthur spoke first. "Didn't think I had the clearance, did you?" Colton opened his mouth, but no sound came. Arthur tilted his head slightly. "You always told the room how to win. Told everyone to crush what's beneath them. I used to think that meant I had no value." He paused. His voice was calm, quiet, but firm enough to be heard through the glass. "But now I see it meant you did." Colton blinked. Arthur nodded toward the boardroom. "But it's real clean in there," he said. "But some messes, like you said, don't wipe up easy." Then he walked past him. Not fast, not triumphant, just free. Colton stood there, and for the first time, felt small in a room built to make him feel tall. At the other end of the hallway, Lydia watched the whole thing from behind her tablet. She smiled. Small, subtle, the way you do when you've seen the rules start to bend in the right direction. It was after hours. The tower had thinned out. The lights dimmed. The synthetic buzz of productivity had quieted to an occasional hum. On the 42nd floor, most doors were shut, except one, the boardroom. Arthur hesitated before entering. He still wasn't used to the feeling of not needing permission. Inside, the marble table reflected the low golden light, like a still pond. And sitting at the far end, as if he'd always belonged there, and never quite belonged anywhere, was Keanu Reeves. No suit, no script, just a cup of coffee, a file folder, and that same calm stillness that made people think twice before interrupting. Arthur stepped in. Keanu looked up and smiled gently. "You made it," he said. Arthur nodded, slowly approaching the table. "Didn't think I'd ever sit in a room like this." Keanu gestured to the chair across from him. "Then it's about time someone made space." Arthur sat down, not awkwardly, not timidly, just present, a beat of silence. Then Keanu pushed a folder toward him. Inside, a breakdown of a proposed initiative, one that would create mentorship and promotion pathways for non-executive staff across all Helix divisions, janitors, mailroom workers, maintenance teams, people who made the building work, but were never invited into the rooms where decisions were made. Arthur scanned the pages. "You wrote this?" "Started it," Keanu said, "but I'm not the right person to finish it." Arthur looked up. "You're the one with the name, the power." Keanu shook his head. "Maybe, but you've got something they'll never manufacture in a boardroom." Arthur leaned back slightly. "And what's that?" Keanu smiled. "Perspective." Arthur didn't answer right away. He looked down at the paper again. The ideas, the budgets, the signatures still blank. Then he reached for the pen that had been set beside it, not shaking, not unsure, and signed his name. Outside the boardroom, Lydia passed by with her tablet. She paused, looked through the glass, and for the first time saw two men on opposite ends of power, working from the same side of the table. The next morning came with a ripple, not a roar. A memo went out company-wide. Subject: New Equity Pathway Initiative. Signed by Arthur Rivera, Director of Internal Advancement. The email wasn't flashy. It didn't brag, but it made its way through departments like oxygen to a flame. By noon, the building was buzzing again, but this time, not with mockery or dismissiveness. It was curiosity, excitement, hope. Arthur walked the halls he used to mop. Now, people greeted him with real nods. Not those awkward, we should know your name nods. Actual respect. Some asked questions. Some offered congratulations. But others didn't like it at all. Colton Hayes watched it all unfold from his glass office, expression tight. The smile hadn't returned. The jokes had stopped working. He'd called a few board members, left messages. No replies. The same people who once laughed at his every punchline were now resharing Arthur's memo on LinkedIn, inspiring leadership from the ground up. Change comes from those who know what's broken. He slammed his mouse on the desk. I built this floor, he muttered. Trey leaned in from the doorway. You build a podium. He built a bridge. Colton glared. Don't go philosophical on me now. Trey shrugged, tired of being a sidekick to a fading showman. Later that day, Colton cornered Arthur in the elevator. Same elevator. Different power dynamic. You think this makes you the hero? He hissed. Arthur didn't flinch. No, just trying to make sure the next guy doesn't spend 3 decades being invisible. Colton leaned in, desperate. This company was built by people like me. Visionaries. Arthur looked at him. Calm. Measured. Then why are you the only one who's afraid of being seen? The elevator dinged. The doors opened. Arthur stepped out. Colton stayed behind, and the doors closed on his silence. In the lobby, a new plaque had been installed near the reception desk. Not marble, not gold, just brushed steel. Simple. Let no one forget. Respect is not a privilege you earn. It's a right you extend. Yar. Arthur walked past it without pausing. He didn't need to read his own words. He lived them. No one saw him come in. Not the front desk. Not the cameras. Not even the executive suite. 1 minute the chair at the edge of the rooftop garden was empty. The next, Keanu Reeves sat there, wearing the same hoodie, the same stillness, the same steady, observant silence. He didn't need to see the emails. He didn't need the performance reports. He came to see something far more important. How people looked at each other now. From above, he watched Arthur walk across the plaza below, not as a janitor, not even as a director, just as a man who finally stood on level ground. Arthur stopped to help a young intern gather spilled papers, smiled, listened, walked her back to the door. No cameras, no witnesses, just character. Keanu leaned back in his chair, nodding almost at himself. You were right, Rosa, he whispered. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small, sealed envelope. No logo, just a name written in his own careful handwriting. To the board, from a silent partner. He left it tucked beneath a potted bonsai near the edge of the rooftop, weighted by a single smooth stone. And just like that, he was gone. The next morning, the board would open that envelope. Inside, a single sheet of paper. No instructions. No commands. Just a message. Power doesn't reveal who you are. It reveals whether you even remember who you were before you had it. Kiar. And beneath that, Arthur stays. Or I go. They wouldn't argue. They knew better now. Later that day, Arthur found the stone on his desk. No note, no fanfare, just a symbol. And that was enough. The story wasn't meant to go public. It wasn't leaked by Keanu, not by Arthur, not even by the board. It started with a barista. She served coffee to a junior analyst from Helix who happened to mention a janitor getting promoted to director after standing up to a bully, and that Keanu Reeves might have had something to do with it. The barista posted it on Reddit. From there, The internet did what it always does when a real story tastes better than fiction. It caught fire. Hollywood star silently reshapes corporate culture. Keanu Reeves helps janitor become executive in quiet power move. The most Keanu Reeves thing ever just happened at Helix Corp. The headlines were dramatic, but the comments were human. I'm crying at my desk. This feels like hope. My dad's a janitor. He used to tell me stories like this didn't happen. Now I'm showing him this one. Respect isn't charity. It's overdue. Inside Helix, a new rhythm had taken hold. Executives started saying good morning to people who used to be invisible. An intern named Jalen, quiet, smart, and ignored for months, finally stood up in a meeting and offered an idea. People listened, not because of fear, but because someone like Arthur had made dignity contagious. That evening, Arthur sat on a bench just outside the tower, eating a sandwich, not because he couldn't afford better now, but because it tasted like routine, and that still mattered to him. He noticed someone pacing nearby, young, nervous, fidgeting. It was the mailroom kid. Evan, maybe? 18, fresh out of high school. New badge, old anxiety. Arthur nodded toward the other half of his sandwich. Hungry. The kid sat, took it like it was sacred. I just wanted to say what you did. It changed how I see things. Arthur smiled. I didn't do it to change things. I just stopped pretending I was okay being small. Evan swallowed hard. I didn't think people like us could say anything. Arthur looked out over the plaza. You don't have to be loud to make noise. Monday morning. Bright. Sharp. The kind of morning that used to blend into every other. But not anymore. Not after what happened at Helix. The world hadn't changed overnight, but inside this building, something had. A young man stood in the lobby, holding a worn backpack and a maintenance badge so fresh it still smelled like plastic. His name was Luis. 19. First day. Shoes a size too big. Confidence a size too small. He looked around nervously, unsure where to go. Unsure if anyone would notice. They didn't used to. Then ding. The elevator opened. Inside stood Arthur Rivera, holding a folder and a coffee, dressed in a crisp button-down and his old, scuffed shoes. He smiled and held the door. You coming up? He asked. Luis hesitated. Maintenance usually takes a service lift. Arthur nodded. Yeah, I used to think that too. Luis stepped in slowly. Elevator doors closed. They rose in silence for a beat. Then Arthur said, You like this kind of work? Luis shrugged. I mean, it's just a job. Arthur smiled. No such thing as just a job, he said. Only people who forgot what it's like to need one. When the doors opened on floor 42, two executives waiting to board stepped back, not because Arthur was now director, but because they respected him, because he'd earned it the hard way, and never made anyone feel small in return. Louis stared as the doors closed behind them. Arthur patted his shoulder gently. Let's get you started. Outside the building near the plaza, a new bench had been installed. Engraved on it, you don't need a title to carry dignity. You just need to carry it. Dedicated to every quiet hero. And somewhere across the city, far from the spotlight, Keanu Reeves rode the subway. Hood up, book in hand, peace in his chest. He wasn't trending anymore. He didn't need to be. He'd said what needed saying. And now, the world was speaking back. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, be sure to subscribe for more inspiring narratives like this one. Let us know in the comments. Backhand index pointing right, do you think Colton truly learned his lesson? Or was he just afraid of losing his power? Backhand index pointing right. And what would you have done in Arthur's shoes? Stay silent or finally speak up? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Your voice matters here. Speech Balloon. See you in the next story.